Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be around the world. Welcome to another Hosting.com live stream with our agency success program. My name is Nathan Ingram. I am the agency trainer here, and I'm really looking forward to the next hour we have together because we're going to be talking about what might be a solution to dealing with one of the most common problems that we as agency people deal with, and that is the site is still stuck on content. So quick poll in the chat, just a simple yes or no will be fine. How many of you right now today have a website in development that is stuck on content? Let me hear from you in the chat. Oh yes. Is there a no? Anybody? Let's hear from you in the chat. Do you have a site currently stuck on content? Class says not today, but he usually does. That's interesting. Good for you, class. So this is a common struggle that we have as we're doing client work, and we're going to talk today about a strategy to deal with that. Let me just one more time drop in the link to download this guide that you see on your screen today. It's about a 14-page PDF that'll step you through all of this. We're just going to work through it together and unpack the framework, and then also do some live work on seeing this actually in place. The other thing I'll mention is that if you have a question as we're going, please use the Zoom Q&A. You'll find that by mousing over the shared screen, clicking on the Q&A icon in the little icon bar. Just keep that open, and then if you have a question, ask it. Also, if you see a question that you also have that somebody else has asked, just click the little thumbs up icon, and we'll take the questions in the order of upvotes when we get to the end of the live stream today. So it's a common issue. A lot of website projects slow down for the same reason. It's that clients are struggling to deliver content when you need it, right? So their deadlines shift, or they've got stuff going on in their world, and that makes the project stall, and that creates all sorts of problems. So just a quick little blip here on why does this happen? I have a lot, so I've been talking about this content issue for 10 plus years now with other agency owners. And at first it was all, oh, the clients can never generate content, all these things. And there's a lot of frustration around people doing web development, which I completely understand. It really can throw, the best laid plans completely out of whack. But I also have a lot of empathy for our clients because most of our clients aren't writers. And so asking them to sit down in front of their computer with a blank, Word document open or whatever, and write some things, that's really hard. I am a writer. I've been writing for many years, and it's hard for me to just sit down and write something sometimes. It's especially difficult when, and you've probably experienced this, you got 1,000 other things going on in your world, right? And when you might sit down, like, for example, today, and think you're going to do some kind of work, all of a sudden the internet is broken. Today we had that massive Cloudflare outage where like a third of the internet went down. And my morning was completely hijacked because we had to deal with some of those things. And that happens to our clients too, right? So they plan to do the content one day and then something else happens. And it's hard to get those priorities in line. Also, they can lack clarity about their message or what pages should be produced and how they should be structured. And so a lot of times we get their thoughts in scattered ways. Like we get an email here and there. We might get a little bit of a document or a half-finished document, that sort of thing over time. And it's really hard to get all of that stuff together to then create a website. So for us, I believe and have taught for many years that a content-first strategy is critical. So before we do design, before we do any development, we're going to get the content nailed and make sure we know what's going to be produced and then have everything ready to go in-house before we start any of the next parts of the project. And what happens is when we've got this delay and content is delayed, everything else is delayed, and then we have many idle weeks. And it can become a juggling act trying to juggle these projects because predictably, Murphy's Law of project management says all of the content is going to be completed by all of our clients that are on hold right now. at exactly the same time, right? So like all the content that you've been waiting on weeks for over 3 or 4 projects that maybe are stalled, it's all going to come in at once. I mean, inevitably that's going to happen. And it's probably going to be right when you're about ready to take a vacation, right? Does this sound familiar to anybody? Can anybody relate to this? Yeah. So this, it's a common scenario. Okay. And what I want to mention to you is that when you see a problem in your process, like I believe in content first. I believe we ought to start with content, but there's a problem with that. And whenever you see a problem in your process, it often points to a service that we can create to solve the problem. Okay. You can do this in a lot of different, anytime there's a problem in your processes of any kind, it's an opportunity to create a service to solve the problem. So today, that problem is content bottleneck. And so we're going to look at a framework for generating copy with AI, at least a starting draft, that can become a service that you provide to your clients and probably even charge extra for, depending on how you're pricing things. And we'll talk a bit about that. Now, AI really, I believe, can break this bottleneck that we experience as web developers. And although a skilled human copywriter is generally going to create better end results, using AI through the content definition process and the content creation process really can help get a project unstuck for a fraction of the cost of a human copywriter. Human copywriter is always going to be better, in my opinion. But AI can really do a lot of heavy lifting to get a project unstuck. All right. Now, before we go any further, I want to do a quick review, really quick, of what I've called the principles of prompt architecture. Now, this is a live stream that we did, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. The links to view the replay on YouTube and then download the handbook similar to this one are right there in this document. And if you weren't with us for that first live stream, kind of the foundational principles of prompt architecture, I'd invite you to go watch that because it's going to help as you put these principles into practice. So if you've been looking at AI or listening to people about AI, you've probably seen the 8 million different prompt formulas that are out there, right? And a lot of people even sell these canned prompts. And what I'm going to tell you is canned prompts get canned results. And so rather than storing up a bunch of canned prompts, what I've done is put together these principles that guide my interaction with an AI tool. Now, that being said, there are some prompt examples here in this document, but my encouragement to you is to massage those, right? Like manipulate them, change them, tweak them for each situation using the principles that I've mentioned here in this document. So you don't need to memorize complex templates. You just need to weave these elements into your prompts. And the 4 elements are clarity, context, construction, and calibration. And I just want to hit these very briefly because we unpacked these for an hour in a previous live stream. So clarity says, in whatever this conversation is you're having with the AI, you've got to bring in this element of clarity, which asks, what exactly is it you want me to do, right? Be specific and clear about the goal you want the AI to accomplish. The more specific, the better. So create an outline for a sales page for accessibility remediation services. Pretty clear. That's our goal. Then we want to provide some context. So what background information can you give me so that I understand better? And so providing context critical to get the AI more focused on what it is you want the AI to do. So here's this same clear request, but with a little more context, a little more information to guide the AI in when it begins to generate. So I want to create a sales page for an accessibility remediation service. The target audience is small business owners who don't know much about accessibility or legal compliance. The goal is to educate them about the importance of making their websites accessible, address common objections, and guide them toward booking a consultation or an audit. Our agency provides manual audits and full remediation, not just automated tools. Okay, lots of context there. And the more information you give the AI, the better the output is going to be. Today, especially as we work through this bottleneck framework, you're going to see how important context is. So a great way to add context, uploading documents, providing URLs with relevant information, screenshots of settings pages, error messages, design elements, just give it a bunch of stuff to process to help it narrow down what you want it to do. Now, construction says, how do you want me to structure the response? So instructing the AI to return several options in different formats can really help. So for example, format this outline as a bulleted list with section headings and a short description under each one. Or return the outline in a table format with columns for section title, purpose, and key messaging. There's lots of ways you can do this, but you want to tell the AI how you want it to return the information that you're requesting. And finally is calibration. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make with an AI tool is giving up on the conversation too early. They're like, this isn't giving me what I want, and they go to something else. You got to keep working with the conversation. These magic prompts that are supposed to just generate exactly what you want, I don't believe in those. I believe you have to keep, talking in the conversation to the AI to gradually shape what you're trying to accomplish. And calibration is that process. So that first response, often not what you want, although they're getting better at this. So adding more clarity, more context, or construction details in subsequent prompts can help you get more closer to what you want. So here's a few examples. So give examples. A great way to calibrate the conversation is say, I like this thing you said. I don't like this thing you said. And here's why, right? Tell the AI that in your conversation. Now try this again. Or clarify mistakes. If the tool misses something in your instructions, point it out. I said no M dashes, right? And then ask questions. Asking questions is an incredibly powerful tool to continue to focus the conversation. And what I mean by that is get the AI to ask you questions. So ask me questions about what you need to know about my audience or services to make this page more effective. Your AI tool is going to spit out 5, 6, 8 questions that it needs to know. And when you provide it that answer, you're giving it more context, you're going to get a better response. So, narrowing it down, try this again using the problem agitate solution formula, or I like the structure of this outline, but the tone still feels too technical for small business owners. Can you revise the description so it's more conversational and less jargon heavy? So that's this process of the 4 C's, right? And if you'll use these principles in every conversation you have with AI, it's going to give you better results. And again, if you missed that live stream, we took a whole hour and gave some really good examples on how to do this. And I'd encourage you to go back and watch that using the links earlier in this guide. So here's what the process looks like for using AI to generate website content pretty reliably. 4 steps here. First, we're going to collect the details. Then we're going to define the content. Then we're going to create the content. And then we're going to present the content to the client for editing. Okay. Now, the nice thing about this, as I mentioned at the very beginning, was that you can create a service around this. This does more than just solve a one-time problem. So you could follow the same steps. You could refine it even better and, tweak a process that fits your agency or your personal work, and then either charge extra for that, or my recommendation would be raise your base price of your websites to include basic content generation using some of the tips that I'm going to give you here in this guide. So raising that, just include this process of AI content generation in every project. It's going to let you charge more money, and it's going to make your projects flow much more smoothly. Because even if the client is going to create the copy themselves, they're going to do better if they're not starting with a blank screen. Giving them some draft content that you've created using this process with AI is going to be so much of a better experience for your clients. Okay, does that make sense? Ready to dive in? All right, so let's do step 1 here. Collect the details to provide context. Now, remember, we just said a minute ago, context is king when it comes to AI. You want to give it a ton of information all at the beginning, like give it this giant box of stuff that it's going to use as context whenever you ask it then to generate copy from all the things that it knows about what you're trying to do. Does that make sense? We want to give it a bunch of details. So the first thing I would suggest you do is that, if you are creating a website for a client, it gets its own project in your favorite AI tool. Now, I'm assuming that you have a paid version of your favorite AI tool, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is, Perplexity, whatever it is that you're using, make sure you have the paid version because the paid version is far superior to the free version for a lot of different reasons. And honestly, Claude, $20 a month, ChatGPT, $20 a month. That's going to be the best $20 a month you ever spend in your entire life in your business. It is incredibly underpriced for the value that you can get out of it. Now, in past live streams, I've used ChatGPT. Today, we're going to use Claude. And so this is a pro version of Claude, which I've just gotten into here. And we're going to create a project. So I've created this project for content bottleneck live stream demo. That's where we are today. And so everything goes in this project. And there's a reason for this. We're going to be able to give it context here, both in the project instructions. So right here, I've started this already for a demo we're going to do later. You can give specific project instructions here that pertain only to this project. So you can provide a ton of context here. And also you can upload files right here into this project, PDFs, whatever it is. We're going to talk through that in a minute that will be used in this project. So you can just front load a bunch of information into this project. And now every conversation you have in that project will use those resources to generate the copy. And that's super important. Okay. I see questions coming in the chat. Let me invite you to use the Zoom Q&A for that. So I'm not going to be able to track the chat during the live stream. So just drop them in the Zoom Q&A and we'll hit all those questions at the end. Okay. So let's talk about common sources for content context. It's hard to say. Before you create anything, we need to get as much information from the client as possible. And what most clients don't realize is that they have more usable content than they think they do. So the goal is to get all that stuff together in one place in the AI project so that the AI tool can use it. So the first and most obvious place is, do they have a current website? So open your favorite AI tool, drop in a URL from the client's website, such as the About page. So we're going to use this. This, by the way, is it's a local to me in the Birmingham, Alabama area nonprofit, which I've known the founders for many years. We took over this site as a rescue site a long time ago. And basically, we just kind of do this for free. We haven't done much development on it or anything. It needs a lot of help in a lot of different ways. But so what these folks do is they provide respite care to families who have children with disabilities, meaning families who have kids with disabilities, they're 24/7, right? So this group allows parents to drop off their kids with disabilities as well as the other siblings, if there are any, to a place where there's trained providers and medical care and all the things that they need so the parents can finally get a night off, right? It's a wonderful ministry service. I love these folks. They do great work. So anyway, we're going to generate some copy for them. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to their About page, which right here, and we're going to put this into the first conversation here. That's not what I wanted. Let's see who we are. There we go. And we're going to ask it if it can access that page. Now, can you access? This is an important step because it may be that for some reason in your hosting situation or whatever, it's blocking AI tools from accessing your site. And you want to know that ahead of time. Now, just FYI, I've put something in the way so that the AI tool cannot access the site. And it's going to tell us that in a minute because we're going to use an alternate method to supply the context. Now, this is for whatever reason taking forever, so we'll keep going while it's working on it. So you want to make sure that the AI tool can actually visit the site. If it can't, then, or if it says it can access this URL, ask it to give it a summary of that page. That way, you know that it actually can access the page. Because sometimes AI tools, I'm not sure if you've noticed this yet, AI tools will lie to you and sound very convincing. They will give you incorrect information and be very convincing about it. So test it, trust but verify. Can you actually access this URL? Please create a summary so that I know it. So if it's unable to access the site for some reason, what I suggest is that you print PDFs of all the key pages of the website. So that's what I've done right here. Here's all the pages on the, okay, yeah, see, the web search failed with an unknown error. I stuck something in Cloudflare so that it wouldn't be able to access it. So we're going to take all of these PDFs. We're just going to stop this process. We're going to go back to here. We're going to go to files, and I'm going to upload from a device and pull this over just a minute and get all of that stuff out of this folder and drop it in here in the project. All right, so it is now uploading all of the things. Okay, so now look what I've done here. What I did is I went to every page of the website and I printed just in Chrome, file print, save it as a PDF. And that way I have a PDF with actual text. Got to make sure it's not a screenshot PDF. Although AI tools do okay with text recognition, but it's better just to give it text. So here's the page, every single page on the site, we now have in text in a PDF, and those PDFs have been uploaded to the project. So it's got a ton of information here now, right? So that's where you want to start. Now, there's also, you can just do file print, save as PDF. There are also Chrome extensions like save as PDF or website to PDF that kind of works a little bit. That'll do like the whole website as a single PDF. There are tools to make this a little easier. File print also just kind of works. But you want to get all that information over into the project. Make sense? Now, another great source for context is call transcripts. Now, if you haven't invested already in a good AI note taker tool, absolutely do this. There's a few things that I think every agency ought to be investing in. One of them is really good AI note taker that joins your calls, takes notes, and at the end of it, you get a downloadable transcript of everything that happened. Because think about it, all of that text, like for years, I would take notes during calls, right? Remember doing this, writing down things, taking notes, then trying to remember, understand what the scribble was that I wrote. And it makes the call take longer because I'm having to write. And it was a terrible thing. Now these AI transcribers can just join the call. You have the full transcript. And now you've got text in a document or a PDF or whatever. You can just drop in the project. Just give it all this information. It'll know how to sort through it. It's text. It's smart enough to figure out what all these things are. So call transcripts goes into the project. Any calls that we've had for the client, but in particular, that very first discovery call you have with the client where you're talking through all the things about the website and getting all the basic questions answered, that transcript is gold when it comes to informing the context of the project. Okay. Another thing to check is printed materials. Does the client have any printed materials at all? Even includes forms and things like that they have, docs. Just get all that stuff, put it in the project for content, for context. Now, this is something that you may not have thought of before. We just did this for one of our newer customers where they had a wonderful promotional video there, and like they had spent weeks refining the text in the voiceover of this promotional video that was shown at their annual banquet recently. And that was great stuff. So we took the video, pulled out the audio and transcribed it. And then now we have all this stuff as text, right? Again, it's all this text, as much text as you can find. We want to prime the project by uploading all of these things as files so that now as we get ready to generate, we have this big bank of information. Does that make sense? Now, the next thing is really the key here. This is something of the secret sauce to this whole process, and it's a content interview. Now, for years, what we used to do was provide a client with a content guide that stepped through all the pages of the website. It would ask questions about like their about page, and it would have like journaling prompts, essentially, like starter questions on what do we need to know on the about page? Tell us when you started. Tell us how this worked. Tell us your mission and vision. These particular questions to help them get started on content. What I've discovered is while that's better than starting with a blank page, the content interview is better. So what the interview can do is talk through these things rather than having the client write them, and let the transcript for this interview be part of the context that you provide to the AI. So here's why the interview matters. Most clients talk better than they write. You can get them talking about what they do much more quickly than if they sat down and just started writing. A short conversation can often produce more usable details than weeks of waiting on draft content that the client's even not probably happy with at the end of it. So it can fill in gaps that aren't covered by the website or printed materials. It gives you voice cues like phrases or stories or tone or language patterns that you can pick up on in that interview, like the way the client talks about their business. They may have certain phrases they use, right? And so taking those, noting them in the transcript for use later when you get ready to generate the content. So as you prepare for the interview, here's a way to think about doing that. If you've never interviewed someone, it can be a little intimidating the first time. So I've broken it down here a little bit to help think through how this process could work. So the first thing I would invite you to do is to identify your content buckets. Now, I call them content buckets. You can think about them in terms of pages of the website, but it's a little broader than that. Like there's going to be a homepage bucket, like what needs to be on the homepage, an about page bucket, but that could be, mission and vision, employees, team, lots of different things, but it's all in this about bucket. The services they offer, the contact information, the conversion pages like scheduling, ask for a quote, whatever the conversion is for the site. You might not know what the final page structure is going to be just yet, but going into this call, you ought to have a good idea of what the buckets, the basic buckets of information are that are going to need to be created. Then let AI help you see the gaps. So dump as much information as you can about what the client is, your discovery call, the current website, all these things. And here's an example prompt I would encourage you to tweak it. This is just, a good starting point for a prompt. So, all right, I'm preparing for a content interview for this website project. Our content buckets are home, about, services, and contact. The project instructions and all the files I've uploaded contain the details collected so far. Review everything, and for each content bucket, summarize what we already know and identify the gaps that still need to be clarified. Then generate a bulleted list of interview questions under each bucket heading that will help the client talk through the missing information. Don't generate any content, because just like you and I have seen, it will start generating content all of a sudden because they love to do that. So don't generate any content yet. Just ask the questions that are needed to gather it. Okay, does that make sense? And so some example output of what you might see from this might look like this. In the homepage bucket, what is the main thing you want visitors to understand in the first 10 seconds? Get them to talk about that. What problems do you solve? What do people usually come looking for when they land on your website? What action do you want them to take first? The about bucket. How did your business start? What principles guide the way you serve? What makes your business different? Et cetera, et cetera. The services bucket. Walk me through each of your primary services. For each service, walk me through what it looks like when you perform this service for a client. Tell me about this. How does this work? What do you do? What are the steps involved if somebody wants to start? What problems does the service solve? Who is the ideal customer for this service? And just talk, have a conversation. You'll be surprised how quickly, they do this all the time. A business owner is actively engaged in this. They probably know their customers really well, and they're used to talking to their customers about things, but it's difficult to make that switch from talking about it to writing about it. And that's what this process can solve. So there are some, you can get better at this if you learn to develop some skills as an interviewer. So here's just some thoughts that can help you up your interviewing game, because a lot of it is not just asking these outputted questions, but noticing things that are interesting and following up on things with some good questions. And so here's a few things that can help improve this interview process. Curiosity is the key. Be curious. If they say something that's interesting, ask them about it. Ask them to talk more about it. treat it like you're trying to understand their business for the very first time. Use silence. It's a great, it's a great tool. So after you ask a question and they answer, just be quiet for a minute. You might feel like you want to fill that void, but just be quiet for a minute and listen, because a lot of times that silence will provoke something else to come out of the client's head. That stuff tends to be even better than what they just said. Follow the thread. So if they mention a story or a phrase or an unusual detail, say something like, tell me more about that, right? So these stories make great website content. Mirroring their words. So if they say something that it just hits you, it lands with you, it's a way they describe their business or what makes them different, or, those key bell phrases that just like you hear it when they talk to you. Repeat it back to them and ask them to tell me more about that. And when you hear a client say one of those key phrases, key terms, like authentic language that's like, that's absolutely this client. What I'll do in the middle of this interview is I'll say, that's something I want my AI tool to remember, or a phrase like that, because that's going to be in the transcript. And you can go back when you're getting ready to generate content and tell the AI tool to look at all those phrases that you said that need to be remembered. And then you get some of the client's authentic language into the process. Does that make sense, everybody? Are we tracking? So ask open-ended questions. Avoid yes or no questions. You don't want to ask a question that just has a one or two, like, what color is the sky? It's blue. Now, how does the sky, when you look up into the sky today, how does it make you feel? That's an open-ended question. Tell me about this. Walk me through this. What usually happens when something happens? How would you explain this? What do clients typically say about this? Open-ended questions, not a question that have a basic answer. So when you're finished, get that transcript, upload it to the project files, and that's going to give you an incredible amount of information that you'll use to generate the content. Okay, so now that we've gotten all of this stuff together, a lot of work creating the context, right? Assembling all this data for context. Once you've got the context, now we're going to actually define the content that needs to be created. We're gonna start with a sample prompt. Again, you may want to tweak this. This is just an example. So I need to define the content outline for this client's website. Review all project files, summarize the main topics and services and priorities, then create an outline of pages and subpages that should be created for the site. Similar to a website's main navigation, output it as a bulleted list, no content yet. We're going to present the outline to the client for approval before we go any further. So this is going to be not as good as it could be because we've only got a little bit of the existing website here, but we're going to start with this and just see what it comes up with. So we're going to let Claude chew on this for a minute. It's right now looking at all of those PDFs. And, I have a thinking model going here. We may want to change that just for the sake of speed, but it's going to take a minute. So it's thinking through, what ought the pages be on this website to be more effective at communicating what Aaron's staff respite care does for the community. So, okay, here we go. So, all right, it's got there's a lot more information here. And I think I agree with most of this. Yeah. I think I like this. And so you might go back and forth and tweak a little bit more. But before you go any further, I want to get the client's approval on this. So after the interview, here's what we think the content outline ought to be, and just get their approval before we go any further. Now, from there, we're going to move on down and answer this question. Are we doing keyword research in this project? Now, this adds another level of complexity, but what you can do here is from this, you can take your keyword research. I don't want to belabor this because I'm taking a little longer today than I anticipated at this point. But you could, for example, have your outline of pages just like you would do in keyword research. These are the pages created. These are the keywords or secondary keywords for each page. Put that in a spreadsheet, upload it as context. Because what you can tell the AI tool to do after the fact is, okay, well, now we're getting ready to generate this disabilities we serve page. And there's, so match that title with what's on the spreadsheet that we uploaded for context. and make sure you include those keywords in the content when you generate it. So there's a way, if you're doing keyword research, add this little step into your process, and it really goes pretty quickly. Okay, now we're going to move into actually creating the content. Now, this first little bit, I started doing this several years ago, probably 3 or 4 years ago, on everything that I do with AI now. And I find it so very helpful to get better quality output. So, you know how you can sort of always, like, there's generic AI text, and you know it when you see it, right? Like, all the sentences are about the same length. There's a whole lot of M dashes, and I kind of like M dashes, but now I'm afraid to use them because it's standard AI text. You can really tell, you can tell it when you see it. So how do we use AI to create text that's a little more authentic or sounds not like AI? So here's a process to do that. And we're just going to continue this conversation here in this project. And here's the prompt. Identify 5 well-known individuals whose communication style, whether writing or speaking, would be most effective for this website's copy. Consider factors like clarity, persuasion, engagement, and tone, and explain why each recommendation is a strong fit. Now I'm going to back out and start this as a new conversation, just so we can keep these separate. So it's going to think about this. And the reason I do it this way is, and you can tell AI, I want you to have a serious tone. And that's great, but it's easier for me to anchor those differences in tone to like people that I've heard of. Who's the right spokesperson for this organization, for example? We're going to have to switch to a different model, so it goes a little quicker. But okay, so here's for Mr. Rogers. What a great option. Brene Brown, also good. Anne Lamott, Atul Gawande, Brian Stevenson. So here's and why. So it's given us some examples and why. Now, here's how you start to zone in. Give me an elevator pitch for the client in each of these voices. Now, if you're not familiar with an elevator pitch, this is like a 2 or 3 sentence summary, succinct summary of what this client does. So we're going to drop this in, and this will let us see the difference between each of these voices. I forgot to change the model again. All right, here we go. So at this point, read each of these pitches, and you could even talk to the client and let the client select which of these voices they like. They're going to all be a little bit different. They're going to have just the tone is different. So which of these best connects with what Aaron's staff does? Just for the sake of argument, I'm going to choose Mr. Rogers because it's Mr. Rogers. How can you not choose Mr. Rogers? Okay. So I'm going to say use the Mr. Rogers voice for all future copywriting in this project, unless I tell you to do otherwise. Okay, so we're just going to tell it to do that, and it should acknowledge it. Okay. Now, we don't have a client interview transcript in here, so we're not going to get quite as good of an output here. I'm going to switch our model to Haiku, which is great for writing, and it'll be quicker. Maybe I can't do that. Hang on a minute. Yeah, there it is. Okay. All right. So this prompt says, using the project files, approved outline, client goals, list the key sections that should appear on the homepage. Focus on elements that clarify who the client is, what they offer, the primary action. No content yet. So this is going to take everything we've done so far, the conversations in a project connect to each other, and we're going to let it output this. Still taking a bit of time. I wonder if we're still having some lingering internet issues after the Cloudflare kerfluffle from this morning. So it's usually not this slow. Okay, here we go. So here's what it thinks that ought to be on the homepage. And what I found is I usually get rid of, a quarter of these things, just depending. It usually gives way more than I actually want. But this gives us thinking through what a wireframe of this homepage might look like. So hero section, yeah. What is respite care? Yeah. Okay, good. All right, so we'll stick with that. Now generate the full homepage copy based on our voice. Uh, Except I can't spell Rogers. It should know what I'm talking about, though. All right, so this is not bad. Okay, not bad at all. All right, good. Now we just repeat this process, right? For every page. Let's say write. I'm just going to tell it this. At this point, we've given it so much information, even simple prompts can work. So let's write the Our Story page based on everything we've collected. Thinking, thinking, thinking. Now, as it does this, I'm going to go ahead and move down just for the sake of time. When you do this, take this content out, drop it in a Google Doc. I think Google Docs work best for this. One doc per page, probably, and give it to the client. So the client now has a place to start with, and they might just replace a few words here and there, so they can edit this copy so fast. It's so much faster, folks. It is so much faster. Yeah, and this is good copy. We want to go through it, of course, obviously make sure that it's correct and not full of errors. Proof it, obviously, and then send it over to the client and get that approval from the client based on the draft copy. And this process is going to move much, much faster than just sending them a bunch of questions or making them start with a blank page. Okay, let me pause just for a second here. Does this make sense? I see there's a bunch of questions stacked up in Q&A, but just as an overall flow, see how this can work? And it's going to unstick your projects. Let me give one more example here. I'm just going to do this in a standard chat. So this is an actual, I'm just going to open these files up. So this is an actual transcript. I've changed the name to protect the innocent. We have a client who's an attorney. I changed his name to Denny Crane. Some of you may recognize that name. This was a conversation. It was just a check-in conversation that we had with this client, just how things are going. Once a year or so, I try to check in with most of our clients. And the idea, he said, well, I really do want to add one more services page to our website. This is an attorney who does estate planning and that sort of thing. He wants to add a probate service to his website. So I'm like, well, you can write this copy, or actually, let's just talk about it for a minute. So look at the time frame here. So at 2014 is when we started. And so I mean, this was so simple. I didn't even follow a big, long thing. I'm like, just talk about it. Talk about what you want to do. So we started at 14 minutes after. It took about 20 minutes. And he talked through all the just basic stuff that he does with probate work. So I took that, and then I took his existing content here. So this is a single PDF with copy from all of his existing services pages. Now, look, this is ugly, but the point is it's copyable text. The AI can digest it. All it is context. So here's what we're going to do. I wrote this prompt ahead of time just for the sake of time. So Denny Crane of Crane, Pool & Schmidt is an attorney who provides estate planning services. I need you to write a services page for a new probate service based on the existing transcript. I've given you all these other pages. Create the new probate services page based on the style of the other services pages. Match text tone and present information in the same format, which is a hero headline and blurb, content with appropriate headings, call to action box at the bottom with a headline and 1 to 2 paragraphs, 500 to 600 words. So let's drag over into this conversation the transcript and that bundle of services pages PDF. And let's give it to Claude. And what we're going to find is it's pretty darn good right out of the bucket. So it's looking through all of the things. And there's our copy. Look at that. So we got our little blurb. And let's just open up the services pages again and let you see how this aligns. So the estate planning page, there's a headline and a blurb. So here we have a headline and our blurb, and then a little block of text with some headings all the way down. And then at the bottom here, probate administration planning, blah, 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 blah. And it matched it exactly. And the copy, I mean, we don't have time to really dive into this copy here, but it looks like the tone is really similar to what's already in the services pages that we uploaded as context. So that's something, you see how long it took me. It took maybe less than 10 minutes to grab that transcript, PDF all the services pages, drop it over into Claude, let it output. And then all we'd have to do at this point is copy that, drop it in a Google Doc, send it over to the client and say, review this, and we can get that page up for you. Like, done. Totally done. So much faster than asking the client to write out the copy for the probate page. All right. So that, folks, is the process of breaking the content bottleneck. And what I'd encourage you to do is change your whole framework for how you're building websites. Just do this for every client. Work in the content interview as part of your process. And what's going to happen is two things. Number one, you're going to be able to charge more for your website because you're providing draft copy. Number two, it's going to take you a lot less time to get content approved than it would be from clients starting from scratch. All right, so before we go into questions, let me just remind you that hosting.com is here to help you with your hosting needs. If you're ready to upgrade and get better hosting that's going to be, in many cases, higher quality hosting than you already have at often a much lower price, I'd encourage you to reach out to my friend Mike Demo. Mike is the partnerships lead for North America with hosting.com. And there's a lot of deals going on right now, especially there's a great Black Friday deal with managed WordPress hosting by Rocket.net. Rocket.net is now part of the hosting.com family, and amazingly fast, excellent support with Rocket.net. And there's a 6 months free deal if you buy an annual plan with Rocket.net right now. It's a great deal. Whatever your needs are, Mike is he's has an agency background. He deeply understands the tech that hosting.com offers, and he can help match you with the right hosting solution for your particular situation. So just reach out and have a conversation. You can scan that QR code to schedule, or just call him at the number that's right here in the guide. All right, everybody, let's take our time and do some questions now. Let me open up the Q&A. If you have a question you haven't asked yet, use the Zoom Q&A to do that. And also just take a minute to scan through the questions that have been asked and click the little thumbs up button if you also have that question, and we'll take these questions in the order of upvotes that they received. All right, first question is from Stacy. What would be a ballpark estimate of what you would charge a client for this project? So great question. I think you could, it's depending on the amount of content you're generating. I would imagine on a brochure site, you could easily charge another $1,000 for it. A larger site might even be more than that. So does that help give just a little, it all depends on you and your clients and what you're offering, and lots of factors based on pricing. But for a, 5 or 6 page, 8 page website, adding $1,000 is not out of the ballpark. All right, Sue. I use Gemini and ChatGPT. Sometimes Gemini especially gets stuck. I tell it, use these words and don't use these, and I get the same darn result. Gemini's issues with images. Yeah, tilt his head 40 degrees and it returns it. Yeah, so text-based image generation in an AI tool like ChatGPT directly is often not awesome. And you're not going to tell it tilt the head down 40 degrees. Image generation is not yet at the same level as content generation. You can very easily tweak the flavor of content. Image generation is a whole other monster. It's much more complicated and it's not at the same level yet. So it doesn't surprise me that you're not getting tilt his head down 40 degrees for an image. It's probably not going to do that. Does that help, Sue? And when it comes to content generation, Gemini is not the best. It's just not, in my experience. Claude and ChatGPT are probably the two best. Gene, what AI transcript tools do you recommend? There's a bunch of them out there, and they all do basically the same thing. The ones that the one that I use is called Meet Geek. Meet Geek. It was an AppSumo deal years ago, and I bought it, and it's just continued to get better, and we love it. It works great. Fireflies is mentioned here. Otter, of course, is one of the OG transcript platforms. Here's what you want to look for. You want to, if you're going to buy one, and I would invest in one, try them and make sure that the recognition is good enough. Even just do a sample meeting and throw some jargon and see if it can translate, especially web jargon, really well. Make sure that, well, let me say this. This is what I like about MeetGeek. At the end, when it's all finished, you get a page that has your video, the transcript below it. You can click the transcript. It jumps to that point in the video. You can download the transcript into a doc or a PDF. It has all the things that I like and that I need, both in going back to find something in a transcript in the video, but also downloading the actual text transcript that can be fed to an AI tool. So Jeanette, does that help? And feel free, folks, drop in your favorite AI tool, AI transcripting tool into the chat, and let other folks see what you like and you're using. All right, next up is Jason. Hey, Jason. Doesn't AI search dismiss AI content because it knows it wrote it in the first place? Authenticity is more important now than ever. Jason, there is no tool that I'm aware of that can reliably detect AI-generated copy. The ones that do are incredibly they're unreliable. ChatGPT, actually, they used to have their own tool to detect copy that ChatGPT wrote, and they got rid of it because they can't even reliably detect their own content. So the issue is, can you, using some of the processes like I've just shown, can you tweak the content that you're getting output to make it not sound as much like generic boilerplate AI text? And then you always want to pass it through a human editor as well. So Jason, does that help? Bottom line is there is no reliable AI detector. There are tools out there that say they do, but if you read up on them, nobody's as reliable. Karen, quick question. Are you liking Claude better than ChatGPT? I'm thinking of trying or changing to Claude. Karen, I am kind of liking Claude now. I have both. I'm paying for both currently. I have what keeps me with ChatGPT is that it knows so much about me. It has so much, like I've used it for 3+ years now, and it just knows all the things automatically. And so it's hard to get away from that. I would almost in some ways have to start over with Claude. But there are things I like about Claude. I think it's much better with coding, and it's really good with content as well, especially these newer models. And I also like that I can give it access to a folder on my desktop where, like, you can, with Claude, you can drop in like a WordPress plugin and drop it in that folder. So even if it's like the plugin has a folder and there's a whole tree of files under it, Claude can access that whole plugin file tree to help you write code. It's amazing. Sherry's asking, what about Perplexity? I haven't used Perplexity deeply. I hear a lot of good things about it. So what we're going to do, I'm using Claude now actively because after the first of the year, we'll do something on coding with Claude as a live stream. Karen, where do you come up with these great prompts? Is there a course you recommend to become better prompt engineer? I feel like I'm barely touching the surface. So Karen, there's Well, the basic answer to your question is there a course I recommend? I don't have one. Um, there's a million of them out there, as you can see. But what I will tell you is um, use the 4 principles that I gave you and just start refining your own conversations. I think you end up getting better content by refining an existing conversation than you do by trying to have this perfect prompt at the very beginning. That said, I've given you some canned examples, but that's just a starting point. You're going to want to refine that conversation even more, because if we really stopped and dug into some of that copy, we'd find some things we didn't like. And so we'd want to keep refining that. Does that make sense? I don't know of a good course to send you to. Robert, any fixes for graphics improvement? There are some specific, like for example, the one I keep reading about is a tool called Headshotly. That's like an AI tool specifically trained to generate headshots, and it's not perfect, but it's better than the generic AI tools because it's been trained with a much more context of what headshots ought to look like. This graphic image generation is way beyond the context of this live stream. And I don't have a lot of information about that for you today. Jacob, does having tools preventing AI from reading your site have an effect on SEO? Yes. Yes, because, so there was the big reaction of, we don't want AI crawling our sites, whatever. And then people realize, well, wait a minute. The very first thing people see when in the Google search result is an AI summary. And if you're blocking AI crawlers, then my goodness, you are now blocking Google, you're blocking your site from showing up in those overviews. So it can absolutely have an impact on your SEO. And I've said a number of times here, the question has come up in office hours several times. And my advice is, unless your site is making money from content, in other words, like we are, our business is writing content so that we have ad revenue based on page views. Unless that's your model, then don't block AI robots. Like if that is your model and it's actually hurting your business that you're not getting that direct traffic, then yeah, I would allow AI, because we're seeing more and more people are clicking through now to those links that AI provides and actually going to the site because the site was referenced in an AI answer. Jacob, does that make sense? If you have a follow-up, drop it in the chat. Brian, ChatGPT often takes hours or days to return copy. Wow, really? Do all AI tools have the same limitation? Can I change my approach to speed that up? Brian, hours or days to return copy. I'm not sure what would cause that. Brian, are you paying for your AI tool of choice? If you have a pro version, it's the speed. I've noted it depends on the time of day. It's like in the old days when everybody got on the internet at the same time, and so everybody's speed was slower. It's kind of like that with resources for AI tools now. It's getting a little better, but there are times when AI slows to a halt. Yeah. I don't know why. I've never seen anything take hours or especially days to return copy. So something is weird there. All right, folks, that brings us to the end of our questions. Anything final in the chat before we start to wrap things up? All right, everybody. Well, this has been fun. I hope you've picked up a few things that can up your content game. This live stream will be published out on our YouTube channel in a few days. Let me invite you also just to drop in our link bundle again in the chat. If you're not signed up for our upcoming live streams, I'd invite you to do that. I do office hours here every Thursday. It's free and open to anybody that wants to attend, and you can ask whatever question you want to ask, and we unpack it together as a really fun office hours community. So there's always a lot of fun questions there and a lot of back and forth in the chat as well. If you want to look at our replays for any of the Agency Success live streams, that link is in the chat. Download link is there to view our previous slide decks and handouts and chat logs from all the Agency Success live streams. All right, folks. Well, thanks for hanging out with me again today. I'll be back Thursday for office hours here on hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.